Breaking news tonight, more than 100 residents at the Cannon Street Warming Center in Spokane have been evicted. This is video that you see here of them getting ready, packing things up, starting the moving process. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here on KREM 2 News First at 4. I'm Whitney Ward. So as the contracts for Spokane warming centers now come to an end, some of the homeless population are now left without shelter during this coronavirus pandemic. Former Spokane City Council President and mayoral candidate Ben Stuckert posted to his Facebook page today saying this is criminal, as other city leaders are saying the removal of these residents violates Governor Inslee's ban on evictions during a pandemic. So our Tim fam is live now in Browns Edition. That's where emotions have been running high. Tim, we know that many people are upset, so many that have actually decided to camp out in that area. So what are you seeing at this hour?
Yeah, Whitney, I can tell you that emotions are really high in this community. You think on one side you have about 100 people being forced to leave a shelter that they called home. Now they're setting up here at the park. But then on the other side of the issue, you have this community that enjoys this park and wants to be out here on a day like this, but say they don't want to because of what's going on right now. I want to show you, this is what the setup looks like right now. You can see dozens of tents have taken over Coeur d'Alene Park in Browns Edition, and it's been very frustrating this afternoon. We've seen several arguments between the homeless and the people who live in this community saying that they don't have a right to be here, but then the homeless say they should be able to stay here in the meantime while they figure out where they can go. Neighbors at the park, though, neighbors around the park, I should say, are not happy that they chose to set up here, because back in October, when the shelter first opened up, the community was assured that the impacts to the surrounding neighborhood would not be an issue, but they say today is proof that it has been an issue. In the last 24 hours, residents say the park has been littered with more trash. People are digging holes to use it as a restroom. And I spoke with residents today in this neighborhood and the people staying at the park, and here's what they had to say.
So now we have 110 people, nowhere to go. So a kind donation brought us tents, blankets, food, and we decided to come here.
It's no wonder that anytime the city announces something like that, neighborhoods are up in arms and they are opposing it.
Residents in this neighborhood tell me they've put in calls to 311 and Crime Check, but little has been done. As for the folks staying here at the park, they tell me they're not going anywhere until the city opens up an alternative shelter. For now, we're live in Browns Edition. I'm Tim Pham, KREM 2 News.
All right, Tim, thank you very much. And we do have team coverage on this issue right now, so we're turning to KREM 2's Amanda Rowley, who is now live down at the warming center. And Amanda, what do we know about how this even happened and why city leaders weren't prepared for this sudden amount of people who are now looking for another place to go?
Well, Whitney, we just got word from the city that this warming center here on Cannon Street is not expected to reopen for about 2 weeks. Right now, about 100 people who were staying at this center have nowhere to go, and no one's really taking any responsibility of what's happening here. So here's what we know right now about the situation with the shelters in the city of Spokane. The city of Spokane had a contract with Jules Helping Hands to run the Cannon Street Center, and that contract ends today at 11:59 p.m. City spokesperson Brian Coddington told me Jules violated that contract by kicking people out of the center and at the temporary shelter at the downtown library before this evening. He says the city then made arrangements for a different provider to take over operations at both locations this evening. The Guardians will now begin checking people in at the downtown library between 6 and 8 tonight. Again, Whitney, quite a few developments in this story throughout the day and by the hour, really.
Amanda, before you go, what is Jules Helping Hands saying about all of this so far, just these developments here in the last few hours?
Yeah, Whitney, Julie Garcia, the executive director of Jules Helping Hands, says she cannot believe all of this is happening during a pandemic. She says they always knew the contract ended today or this evening, but claims the city gave them no direction on what to do next.
Our contract ends at 12 o'clock tonight. We were told by the city that, and we can't kick people out at 11:59 and expect them to find somewhere to go. So we aren't checking them in today. There are still people down at Cannon that we are waiting to find beds for.
Now, Whitney, I did ask the city if it talked to Jules Helping Hands prior to when it says the contract was violated, and Brian Coddington said yes, they did, but didn't elaborate on what those conversations were.
But the fact is, of course, people are now camping down in Coeur d'Alene Park in Browns Edition. So what is the city saying is being done now about that?
Yeah, this is interesting, Whitney. So in order for the city to enforce the sit and lie or the public camping laws, there has to be space in shelters and community court needs to be open. And right now, that's not the case. So due to COVID-19, community court is closed, which means the city cannot cite people and send them to community court. But as we mentioned, the temporary shelter at the library will be checking people in starting at 6 this evening. Reporting from the Cannon Street Warming Center, Amanda Roldy, KREM 2 News.
Point is, we're going to stay here until we get smelled.
We're
not going nowhere. We're not going nowhere.
Emotions running high in Browns Edition tonight. Neighbors aren't happy about homeless camps being set up in a nearby park.
At a park that's normally peaceful,
You guys can't stay here.
We are staying here. What are you going to do about it?
peace is not what you'll find.
Point is, we're going to stay here until we get smelled.
Pandemic.
We're not going nowhere. We're not going nowhere.
A strong statement from Tina Anderson. She's homeless and is now calling Coeur d'Alene Park home.
So now we have 110 people, nowhere to go. So a kind donation brought us tents, blankets, food, and we decided to come here.
The park is being taken over with the litter and people just living here.
Neighbors in Browns Edition aren't happy. Since the shelter opened last fall, they say crime has risen. Their park now littered with trash, needles, and feces.
You know the bathrooms are locked, so when we're cleaning up trash, we're finding pits dug throughout the park, so you know what's happening.
The homeless population here says that's not them.
There are people shooting up drugs.
Show me a person shooting up here now. Show me one.
They admit there are some who do those things, but the ones camping here say it's temporary until the city reopens a shelter.
Until we get something, anything, we will do our best to remain calm, to make sure stuff is picked up, and keep it clean.
People who live here, though, are fed up and blame the city for not holding up their end of the bargain to protect their quality of life.
It's no wonder that anytime the city announces something like that, neighborhoods are up in arms and they are opposing it.
San Vu says he's called 311 and crime checked multiple times, yet little has been done.
This neighborhood, Browns Edition, is being asked to bear a disproportionate burden of this problem.
Well, I did speak to the president of the neighborhood council in this community this evening, and he tells me that he's going to work with the mayor's office to work on a solution. In the meantime, the people staying at this park say they don't plan on going anywhere until the city finds them another shelter.
We want to now turn to Brian Coddington, who is the spokesperson for the city of Spokane. He is now joining us live on video conference. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. So we're just finding out late this afternoon that Jules spending the next 2 weeks to pack up. So first things first, what is the city doing right now for the 100 plus people who are now camping in Coeur d'Alene Park in Browns Edition?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Whitney. So we're clear about it, we are in the middle of a transition between a seasonal warming center model that happens every year. The contracts for those warming centers are expiring tonight at 11:59 p.m. There were provisions in place for residents to be able to stay until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning because it doesn't make any sense to put people out in the middle of the night. So there was an extension to be able to do that till 10 o'clock in the morning. Right now what's happened is we have made arrangements for an alternative provider to operate the library center tonight beginning at 6 o'clock. So just in under an hour, people will start to be able to check in there. So we are encouraging those who are in the park to be able to come down and utilize that shelter space. If there's not enough room there, we will now be able to identify space that's underutilized capacity in the rest of the shelter system.
So does that mean that the city has people actively going to Coeur d'Alene Park right now, circulating to tell each one of those people what their options are? Because they're saying that they don't have an option, that they don't know where else to go. So what is the city doing to inform those people?
Yeah, so they are being informed. They've been informed this afternoon. They will continue to be informed this evening. In fact, there's arrangements been made for bus service to pick them up and drive them back to the downtown library location so that transportation doesn't become an obstacle. But we really want to make sure that everybody has a place to go this evening. As there's 93 licensed sites for the previous operator, so 93 beds. There's 59 at the downtown library location. The remainder of those will be absorbed into the rest of the shelter system.
And what do you say to the neighbors there all around that park who say they're just caught in the middle now with a homeless camp suddenly cropping up, near their front yard?
Yeah, so we do apologize that they were caught in the middle of this. It's an unfortunate situation.
So you said that there has been communication with Jules Helping Hands before today. How did this happen? What happened so that they felt like they had to get people out by 11:59 when you said there was a contingency plan or at least arrangements starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow? What happened there?
Yeah, I can't really explain where the disconnect came. They've been operating under a contract that was in place since last fall. That was a mutually agreed upon contract between both parties. It's been in place for several months now. There's been communication leading up to this over the past couple of weeks, reminders about the contract and communication as recent as yesterday to make the situation clear. So I can't speak to at this point where the breakdown happened.
Police are telling people that they have to leave. Are they escorting them off? What is the scene there right now?
Yeah, they're not enforcing right now, Whitney. Brian Coddington with the city tells me that right now it's about education. Those police officers are walking up to folks in tents and letting them know what's going on in the rules. One of the things they're telling them about is the buses behind me. You can see there are 3 STA buses here. These buses are going to give free shuttles to the people here at the Coeur d'Alene Park in Brown's Edition. To take them downtown where the shelter at the library will be opening up at 6 o'clock. And if you look this way, you can see that there is still a lot of people here. They're not taking down their tents. I've counted about one person who began taking down their tents when the buses arrived. And actually, it's been still pretty tense here. A lot of people still chanting and arguing. We've heard a lot of the people who are staying in these tents saying that they actually don't want to go. That's different from some of the people I spoke to earlier this evening who say that they are just waiting for the city to give them a place to go. The city is saying that there is a place for them now. So we have to just wonder when these folks plan on leaving.
So while Jules Helping Hands says it will spend the next 2 weeks clearing out that warming center, the Guardians is supposed to be operating the library shelter downtown, which is where many of those people who are now experiencing homelessness at Coeur d'Alene Park are supposed to be going tonight. Casey Decker is live at the library location right now. So Casey, what do you see there now? Are people starting to move into that location tonight? Are you seeing anything like that?
Well, guys, I'm here with Mike Shaw of the Guardians Foundation. They just figured out today that they would be taking over this facility as well as the Cannon Street facility eventually. Here's Mike now. Mike, when did the city let you know that you were going to be taking control of these facilities?
Well, we've been in conversation since we opened up the COVID center out at the fairgrounds. We've been operating out there for about 3 weeks for going through triage and whatnot. And there have been talks about this facility, a need for this facility at midnight tonight. And then we had no idea about the situation in Cannon. So as far as we knew, we were going to be doing something maybe, but we got a phone call this afternoon at 1 o'clock stating that the need is now, that we don't want a gap in services for our population that we need to serve. So they asked us to fulfill a role, and we're proudly doing that here now.
What all have you had to do in the last few hours in order to get ready to serve all the people that are going to be here?
Well, we're a pretty nimble organization. We've got great members and staff. We just went through our staffing charts, picked out the best and most nimble people, got them in here. It's work in progress, of course, since it's only been a few hours.
So what are your thoughts on that right now the previous organization, Jules Helping Hands, is saying they're going to take a couple days at least to remove their belongings before they allow you guys in there to service that center?
Well, that's a matter between the city and Jules. It's unfortunate that there are service breaks for the individuals. It was a full-time ongoing concern there. They're always at capacity, and our concern is really about those individuals that were disbanded because of loss of services on their end. So we just hope the message gets to all those individuals so that there are capabilities ramping up, and the city and the previous vendor need to work out their issues.
It looks like police there are in the background. We hear a lot of chanting and arguing. Tim, what can you kind of tell us about the scene right now and even how it's changed here just in the last 20 minutes or so?
Yeah, Whitney, it really has changed even in the last few minutes or so. Police have actually started forming a line into a police line and walking the park. You can see behind me, and they began letting people know that it's time to leave. They say that they got on the intercom and said that they want people to get on the buses and they want people to go to the downtown shelter, and that failure to do so could lead to their arrest. As the police started walking in that police line, we did start to see a little bit more urgency with the people staying here at Coeur d'Alene Park, and people started packing up their belongings. But you can see that there are still tents set up, and some people are not wanting to leave.
Tim, what's happened here in the last 10 minutes or so?
Yeah, Whitney, I actually saw just a few people getting on the STA buses, taking advantage of what the city is offering them, but it was slow moving really before the police got into a line and got on the loudspeaker and told them that it's time to leave the park. Earlier we told you that they wanted to do more education to encourage people to leave on their own, but that wasn't working, and they had to take things a step further and let people know that if they didn't leave, it could lead to their arrest. So I want to show you over here, there are fewer tents than there were earlier, but there definitely are still quite a few here still this evening. Police still standing in a line watching as people pack up their belongings and head to the library. It doesn't seem like a lot of people are taking advantage of going to the downtown shelter. Earlier we heard people chanting that they didn't want to go. So it's just been kind of a very rapidly changing day, and you got to feel for the community. Obviously they don't want a homeless camp set up in the park on a nice day like this, but at the same time you think about the homeless population, it's got to be somewhat confusing and frustrating for them to some extent, because they were abruptly forced to leave the shelter. So it's been kind of a weird in-between day, but we do know that the city is opening up that shelter at 6 p.m. tonight. They are taking people in between 6 and 8 o'clock tonight, and that's where they can go in the meantime while a lot of this gets figured out.
What can you tell us about what has been changing here in the last few minutes?
Yeah, Whitney, I can tell you that things are starting to clear up here. There are about 12 tents left, and people are starting to clean up their belongings. And we've actually even seen people pick up trash, which has been really great. I know a lot of times people have been making quick judgments to say that they would leave a big mess here, but it's been great to see that everyone has been trying to clean up and end this situation peacefully, because it has been a very long day for everyone. I think we could all say that and agree. You can see if you look over here now, police are moving forward. They are walking in a line, inching closer to the remaining tents. They haven't said much since we last checked in with all of you, but they did say over the loudspeakers earlier that they want this to be peaceful. They want people to get on the buses provided by the city to take them to the shelter downtown. You can see right now they are talking to the people that are here. Brian Coddington with the city telling us that this is about education right now, not enforcement, but there is a 10 p.m. curfew in the city, so people wouldn't be able to camp here past 10 o'clock. So there could be enforcement at that point. So you can see that, again, police are talking to people, maintaining some social distance, of course, during this pandemic. But yeah, this has been a very stressful day for a lot of people. I know a lot of neighbors in this community have been very frustrated by the ongoing issues that the shelter has caused them in this community, they say, between trash and other things happening at this park. But they are hoping that things get resolved. We're going to stay on top of this story for you tonight. We'll have more developments on KREM 2 News at 10 and 11.